Arnold didn't become strong in the gym, he became strong at home, where no one loved him. Arnold Schwarzenegger was born in a small Austrian village in 1947. The streets were narrow, cold, and often covered with snow. Every trip to school felt like a journey through a frozen battlefield. His father, Gustav, was a man of iron discipline, strict, cold, and rarely showing warmth or affection. At home, Arnold felt the weight of expectation pressing down on him constantly. School offered no respite. Children laughed, pushed, and mocked him for being different, for daring to dream bigger than the small village allowed. Every insult cut deep. Every shove, every cruel word became a test he had to survive. The silence of his home, the cold stare of his father, and the ridicule of his peers, they became his constant companions. Pain was never far, and fear was always whispering in the corners of his mind. Yet in that struggle, something began to awaken inside him. A quiet, burning fire. A desire to rise, to grow stronger than the world that tried to hold him down. Every lonely night, every hardship, every moment of doubt planted the seeds of a champion. And though no one may have seen it then, the boy in that small Austrian village was already being forged by pain. As the years passed, the village did not change, but Arnold did. While others accepted their place, he quietly began to reject it. The small houses, the same faces, the same conversations in the local tavern. Everything felt too tight, like a shirt that no longer fit. He started to notice something. The strongest chains around him were not made of iron, but of habits and beliefs. People woke up, worked, complained, drank, slept, and repeated it again and again. For them, this was life. For him, it felt like a prison without walls. On Sundays, when the village gathered for routine, Arnold watched the older men. Their backs were heavy, their eyes tired, their dreams long buried under years of resignation. He looked at them and silently promised himself, "I will not end up like this." In his room, the walls were bare, but his mind was crowded with images. He imagined cities with tall buildings, loud languages he did not yet understand, and bright lights that never went out. Somewhere far away, there had to be a place where ambition was not a sin, but a requirement. He began to treat every day like training, even outside the gym. Carrying buckets of water became a chance to test his grip. Walking uphill turned into legwork. Chores, which others hated, became part of his preparation. Every no he heard from adults only sharpened his focus. When they told him to be realistic, he learned to stay silent on the outside and disagree on the inside. The doubt became a strange kind of fuel, burning slow but steady. At night, when the village went to sleep, Arnold stayed awake a little longer. He lay in the dark, listening to the wind against the window, replaying the same scene in his head. A bigger stage, bright lights, a crowd calling his name. He did not know how or when, but he knew one thing with absolute clarity. He was not meant to remain the quiet boy in the cold Austrian village. He was preparing to leave it behind. Years later, the village still woke up to the same church bells, but Arnold now woke up to a different sound in his head, the rhythm of his own ambition. Morning no longer belonged to chores or routine. It belonged to preparation. He began seeking out anything that could make him stronger. Old magazines, articles, photographs of athletes, anything that hinted at a world where the body could be shaped like a sculpture. When he finally held a bodybuilding magazine in his hands for the first time, it felt less like reading and more like looking into a mirror of his future. The men on those pages were not just muscular. They stood on stages, under blinding lights, with thousands of eyes on them. They looked untouchable, larger than life, as if they had forced the world to notice them. Arnold stared at those images and felt something click into place. This is it, he thought. This is my way out. From that moment, training stopped being a hobby and became a mission. The small, Improvised weights that others laughed at turned into tools of escape. Every rep, every set, every drop of sweat was a step away from the village and closer to the life he imagined. He began to structure his days around progress. Wake up earlier, train longer, eat whatever he could find that might help him grow. While others rested after work, he pushed his body past the point of comfort, learning to find a strange sense of peace in the burn of his muscles. He studied the champions in the magazines like textbooks, their poses, their routines, their stories. He noticed a pattern. None of them came from ease. Many had grown up in poverty in small towns, with people telling them no at every step. Instead of discouraging him, this reassured him. If they could break out, so could he. Slowly, his body began to change. Shoulders widened, arms thickened. Veins surfaced like lines on a map, tracing the work he had put in. In the village, people started to notice. Some were impressed, others whispered, laughed, or called it foolish. But something had shifted inside him. Their opinions no longer felt like chains. The same words that once cut him now slid off like rain on stone. Every joke, every smirk only reminded him that they were staying, and he was leaving. Opportunities were rare, but he watched for them like a hunter. A small local contest, a chance to travel to another town, a rumor about a bigger competition in a nearby city. Each event became more than a show. It was a test of whether his dream was moving from fantasy toward reality. The first time he stepped onto a small, poorly lit stage, there was no roar of thousands, no blinding spotlight. Just a handful of people, a squeaky sound system, and cheap trophies on a table. But for Arnold, it didn't matter. As he posed under the weak lights, he wasn't seeing that room. He was seeing the stage from his daydreams. He did not win every time. Sometimes he placed low. Sometimes he walked off with nothing. But even those nights felt different from the losses of childhood. These were not rejections of who he was. They were feedback on who he was becoming. After each contest, he went back to the weights with renewed focus. What needed to be bigger? What needed more detail, more balance, more power? His body became a project, and he was both the architect and the worker. The village still tried to hold him with its routines, its skepticism, its small expectations. But the gap between the life he lived and the life he envisioned grew wider every day. One world was shrinking behind him, the other was slowly, surely pulling him in. Arnold didn't know the exact path, the exact timing, or the exact city yet. But he knew this. The next time he left the village for a competition, he wouldn't just be visiting another town. He would be taking his first real step out of the life he was born into, and toward the life he was determined to build.